It is without a doubt that Rwanda is one of the fastest growing economies in sub-Saharan Africa and the world, if we are to look at it contextually. Around the time when we were starting this decade, between 2001 and 2014, the average GDP growth was about 8% per year. Now, of course, around 2015, 2016, we all know what happened on a macro level. Everything slowed down, but that was not a country-specific issue. It was a global issue. The World Bank had mentioned that we needed to cut down on foreign aid after this was cut in 2013, and we faced the ripple effect within our different investments and our different sectors. So what we're doing here today, and what the panelists on my left are here to answer, is the question, why Rwanda? Why would we look at a country that in the past had been mentioned as a rather small economy or a rather small country that couldn't size up to most GDPs or a loan book of a huge bank? So we've definitely gone past all the odds that could have been asked regarding Rwanda. We've gone past any questions that you'd entirely want to know about a country that is moving at this particular pace. We've had the opening remarks, so we'll get into some of those comparisons with our panelists. On my left, we have Mr. Jean de Dieu Kagabo, who's the CEO of Soft Packaging. He'll be giving us the perspective from light manufacturing industries. Right next to him, we have the Chief Operating Officer, Afrique Ramba from BPR Atlas Mara. He'll be guiding us on financial innovation and what exactly the banking industry is getting into in Rwanda. Right next, we have Crystal Rugege, Mrs. Crystal Rugege, who's the Director of Business Strategy and Operations for Carnegie Mellon University. Of course, as Rwanda moves into being a knowledge-based economy, she'll be giving us that perspective as well, and ICT. And on the extreme end, giving us the perspective on inter-regional trade as drivers of investment in the country. We'll be hearing from Robert Opira, who's the DG for Trade and Investment at the Ministry of Trade, Industry, and East African Community. Now, since I mentioned you last, we'll start off with you, DG, to give us a perspective. The number that had been floated around for Afreximbank and the portfolio that was presented was $500 million. But for you to tap into that particular bucket, you have to have either strategic entry points or a well-structured proposal for Afreximbank to be able to provide you that financial capacity to move into your sectors. We'd like to understand the value proposition that you've created now from the ministry to try and ensure that you have the right entry point or the right strategy for most of these investments we're getting into.
First of all, I think I want to appreciate the opening statements that were made, and they clearly highlighted what Rwanda has been able to achieve and the kind of incentives that we put at the disposal of the different investors. That having said, because I don't think it's good to repeat the same, so we have the very much different sectors that within our investment code that we have indicated are priority sectors. And the intention actually is to really tap into this funding to be able to invest in those sectors. And those sectors are quite many. There is exports, energy, ICT, logistics, health, you name it. So there is quite a number of sectors that we're looking to really tap to this fund to invest in. And in terms of proposals, it's always ready, and Rwanda is always ready. We have a number of proposals in the very sectors that I've identified, for which actually it will be very much easier to immediately implement, because as RDB was saying previously and even in the opening statements, we have identified these sectors for which actually the business plans are there. Investment facilitation is readily available. And we have no doubt that actually Rwanda is going to take advantage of this facility to even make more headways in its development agenda.
Right. Of course, one of the sectors that is being catered to is industries, which brings me now to Mr. Kagabo on my left. One of the largest case studies from the Afreximbank, and I refer to Afreximbank being one of the larger partners, larger financiers, was in Egypt when they provided $200 million as industrialization liquid facility. Now, we've tried to paint that comparison to Rwanda, what exactly we would term as a bucket that has been given for SMEs, and we saw that $200 million, by the time an SME comes to get such amounts of money, they're not really an SME. So we asked what the minimum threshold was, and that amount is about $5 billion, which is still high for an SME. But we'd like to understand, in the event that you were to match up or scale to be able to get such financing from Afreximbank, how will that look as a value proposal or the creative process trying to match up to such levels of investment?
Thank you, George. As all know, all SMEs are always struggling to get the financing in different financial institutions. But this can be a good opportunity as an SME, you always wish to grow and plan to grow anyway. Even though we cannot meet, our project cannot meet that 5 million minimum lending they are giving today, but soon, and also they might be also require that. And as soft packaging as well, like we have more projects in pipeline, which might need that facility, but it all depends on the conditions they're going to give. And soon, if all we meet those conditions, we knock on their door, sure.
All right, let's hear a different perspective from the financier as well from here. Just the same question that I was asking to Mr. Kagabo, of course, in regards now to financing. We have the bucket that we have been given. $500 million was what Afreximbank came with to Rwanda. Are there any sectors that we've noted, bankable projects, that were ready on the table to be able to take advantage of such financing, or whether we would be engaging in co-financing or credit line? We'd like to understand what the banks in Rwanda are thinking.
Thank you. From the banking perspectives, I think the opportunities are there. They are enormous. Rwanda being a developing country, we have a lot of opportunities in Rwanda in different sectors. If you look at all the sectors of our economy, I think most people touched on it. They are all developing. So we have a lot of projects in terms of infrastructure projects. When you move around, you can see a lot of infrastructure being developed. There's energy. We have a lot of sectors, projects in energy, where these co-financing with these kind of institutions could be used. There is transport. So the need is there. The need is there. Maybe the challenges that we've been facing as local financial institutions is a lack of long-term financing. So I would say it will be a good opportunity for us if we have these funds that we could partner with and be able to finance such projects. The other limitations, of course, is our obligor limits. Depending on the capital available for us, we could not lend some projects that, for example, are bigger projects that require $100 million, $50 million. So when we get such funds, then we could co-finance with them. So there is a big need. Again, what it helps us to do as banks, if there is a co-financing with such funds, it limits us not to. It's better than direct credit lines where we are exposed to foreign exchange risks. So in this sense, if we partner with the DFIs, they would finance the foreign exchange bit of the needs of the project and would come in as a local currency lender in this sense. So we see this as a good opportunity for us.
All right, let's shift the focus now. As we move to a knowledge-based economy, the question has to be thrown to you, Crystal. We have the ICT Innovation City that we intend will house most of the technological prospects pushing the country forward. But what would be the competitive advantage that the Kigali Innovation City would have, for example, against other emerging tech cities across the continent? We have Konza, for example. What would be the strategic advantage?
Now, on the issue of Kigali Innovation City, I think what's distinctive about it in comparison to other tech cities or other tech hubs that are coming up across the continent is the deliberate focus on high-quality human capital development. So I think as Africa as a whole looks towards really taking advantage of the fourth industrial revolution, human capital, I think, is the single largest investment that we can make to really realize that vision. And so Carnegie Mellon University is the anchor tenant of Kigali Innovation City. We'll be moving there next year in the spring. But alongside Carnegie Mellon University, we'll have the African Institute for Mathematical Sciences, we'll have African Leadership University, the Institute for Theoretical Physics that will be coming here from Italy. The University of Rwanda will be establishing a biomedical research center, and I understand there are plans underway to bring a pharmaceutical company as well as some other telecommunications companies. So I think, having this ecosystem of really high quality talent, in the same space, and also institutions that all have kind of a Pan-African focus. Our institution is quite young, but we have students from about 11 different countries. I know the African Institute for Mathematical Sciences as well as African Leadership University have kind of similar models to bring talent from across the continent. So I see Kigali really becoming the center for high quality technical talent to really, accelerate this ICT agenda.
Right. Oh, we'd like to hear from the DG, but before that, Crystal, just create a bit more context. Having the industry is one, but we'd like to link the tertiary to the industry, knowing that we're not only churning out graduates, but we're churning out relevance as well.
Sure. So maybe I can speak to some examples of what works for us very well at CMU. So we believe at Carnegie Mellon, we believe in, I think, two major things. One, that research is a cornerstone of advancing any society and also creating competitive economies. We also believe that as an educational institution, we're relevant if we're putting people into the market that aren't kind of immediately consumable by industry. And so we work very closely with industry. So just for context, we here in Kigali, the program that we have are two master's programs, one in IT with various focuses, data science, software development, smart grid systems, and then we also have a degree in electrical and computer engineering. And so our students spend about 40% of their time in the 2 years that they're with us interfacing with industry in a number of ways. One is through internships, one is through practicum projects. The practicum project is interesting. It's like a mini consulting project where we invite firms to submit a very well-defined scope of work to us, where students can actually deliver a solution to them within a 4-month time frame, within a semester. And so this is like a mini consulting project for the students, but the companies also benefit. We don't like to promote it as free labor, but essentially, they're kind of getting a taste of what we have to offer, but they also get fresh ideas, from students. And we've had a number of cases where the products that the students produce during that time frame are actually implemented within the companies, and companies actually hire them when they graduate to do this. And so we use that as kind of a checkpoint for us to make sure that what we're teaching is relevant. So we always, we're seeking continuous feedback from the companies. And then, aside from that, we also engage in industry research.
Right. From the Workforce Development Authority, we've seen a lot of conversation and investment in vocational training centers for business incubators as well that are going to be added on to what is currently being done. That's from the funding aspect. But of course, when we put money into skills development, we need to know when exactly this will pan out or what plan there is to assess the current skills workforce. From the government perspective, what are you looking at?
Well, I think I will speak basically from the perspective of the Rwandan government. And Rwanda being a very small country, landlocked, although we normally consider ourselves land-linked because we fall at the center of this continent, we have limited natural resources. So what we have really put at the center of our very many initiative is human capital development. And in terms of return on investment in any human capital development endeavor is really measured in how much improved productivity the workforce is, on how much professional service providers you are able to export, on how much labor efficient you are. We also have a greater insistence on the use of ICT both in all the sectors of the economy. And without really a qualified and skilled labor force, we may not achieve this. And for Rwanda, at the center really of our development initiative is really to create enough pool of human capital that is capable of trying to really put this country on the global map. And what actually Carnegie Mellon is doing and other initiatives in terms of trying to create sufficient vocational training graduates is really tied to the whole policy of trying to develop our human capacities to be able to take advantage of the not only the existing but also the future global trend where we see areas like e-commerce gaining prominence, and all these cannot be really tapped into if we do not, have a basis of intellectual capacity to really be able to harness the different opportunities that come with really developing the skills of our workforce. Yeah.
Right. Let's change gears a bit and come back to manufacturing. We'll do a slight comparison. About 5 years ago in the manufacturing sector, products that recorded negative growth were soap, paint, textiles, sugar, generally across the board. And most of these were attributed, first of all, to the cost of production, no electricity or insufficient electricity. So we'd like to hear from you in regards to then and now. Where are we currently in terms of efficient production? Yes.
Based on that numbers, actually, we faced a lot of challenges. Manufacturers faced a lot of challenges, which was poor infrastructure, lack of enough electricity, even I'll call it expensive, and also unskilled people. But for now, things have changed. According to my experience, especially for my factory, since we started, like last year in June, we've never faced a shortage of electricity for more than 7 minutes. Even if there is a maintenance going on, they inform us at least 1 day in advance.
You said 7 minutes? 7
minutes. There is evidence for that. And then once there's if there is a maintenance going on, they're always informing us 1 day in advance, saying tomorrow at midday sharp, you're going to cut off the power. So make sure you're prepared in advance. That's a big challenge. Not only that, the power have reduced, the cost have reduced. More than since January, at least more than 20% of the power tariff we used to pay on. That was a big challenge, which was giving high cost of production, which was causing all this I can call it failure to host or those products which couldn't even move forward. But now I can say from now and tomorrow and after tomorrow, we have hope that all challenges are out. We're going to be able, these numbers you're giving us, soon it might even be the other way around.
How tangible are the returns of your investment now in terms of seeing the progress? Just paint us a picture on your business particularly. How tangible such reforms have had on your output?
So far, based on the business climate, especially in manufacturing, Rwanda now have started to grow in terms of manufacturing. My product, what I make is packaging. So the packaging, all those manufacturers, we need packaging. So it gives me it gives me the clear picture for the future of our product, and all based on our market. Before there was some challenges on the market where I couldn't access, like on Congolese market, due to some barriers of taxes in Congo and everything. But now everything now starting to open their doors. In East African community, I can access to Ugandan market as they can access to mine. I can access to Tanzanian market. So that gives us the clear picture of the future.
And of course, most of the members of the audience, when you come into Rwanda, you're told no plastic bags, and Rwandans here already know about it, but there is another level to that. Even the packaging that is in here has to be biodegradable. So we'll be, maybe you could just weigh in on that, Jean de Dieu. You've called for the Management Authority and the Ministry of Health when supplying particularly for nets to ensure that they're biodegradable. Give us your progress report on that.
Yes. Recently, there was a tender for mosquito net happening in Rwanda, which have to be produced from locally, stitched and packed in Rwanda. So where we come in is to provide the packaging. Normally, the mosquito nets, to be complete, it needs like major 3 raw materials, which is the polyester or polyethylene and the packaging. That's the major raw materials we need. So where we come in is we provide packaging. That packaging providing should be, we provide like biodegradable packaging, which is going to last for three years before it becomes degraded. And also we invested in recycling. We can also recycle those polyethylene bags and to be reused again in another product which is not environmental friendly. Right. Yeah.
All right. We'll come back to you to give us the entry points into the manufacturing sector and investment opportunities. Let's talk money now. Let's talk money. We discussed while we were having the conversation back regarding when BPR and Atlas Mara had the merger, and of course, since we're discussing financial innovation, we have to know how exactly you worked out your business model. Of course, as you streamline, there's the issue on potential losses of jobs, which is a common recurrent issue across the financial sector everywhere. But from an investor perspective, we'd like to know how you handled protecting investors' confidence, but still ensuring efficiency in operations.
Yeah, thank you. Of course, there is a challenge. Where there is innovation, definitely there will be some redundancy in terms of employment or jobs. But the good news is that at least in Rwanda we see very good laws that protect the investors. So for the new investor in Rwanda, for example, in BPR, part of Atlas Mara, what was done is that when they came on board, of course they had to have to create a new strategy for the bank, where they want to take the bank. Previously, when you look at BPR, at the time was more of a local, more retail bank. So the new strategy or the new vision for the new shareholders is to create more of a universal bank. That is a bank that is really good in retail, however, also to grow the corporate area of the bank and also the treasury. To do all that, it requires innovation in all different areas. Innovation could say in 3 parts. Of course, there's institutional innovation, there has to be product innovation, and processes. So some of those will affect, of course, jobs. By creating that new strategy, what we had to do was, of course, come up with a new target operating model for the bank, and then try to align the jobs that are in the bank towards that new TOM, call it, the new structure, to be able to achieve the strategy that the new shareholder wanted. So in doing that, of course, there is a risk that some people would lose their jobs, but that is to trade off to be able to achieve the strategy. For example, but the loss of course, with the innovation, what it brings about is you have to look at where you can use technology, bring in better systems, better processes, automate some of them, Of course, with automation, you lose some people along the way, or move the people from areas where you don't need them and move them to areas where they are needed. So in that effect, that happened to be able to be more efficient. The other thing, of course, is we try to focus on our core business. Sometimes you find that in several institutions, you do several things, but some are not your core businesses. Some of the, for example, the staff, the support functions, for example, cleaning of your premises or security services. There are some services that you don't have to do yourself. You can outsource them. So there had to be a lot of changes around the bank for the betterment of the bank to make sure that at least the bank is turned around to the as the shareholders expect.
All right, fast forward to now, we have Afreximbank coming, again, one of the financiers that could potentially come and pump more liquidity into the market. Now, more banks or other banks that we've spoken to have expressed partnership in co-financing as a more favorable option as opposed to getting a credit line from Afreximbank. Just speak to us about the strain that either of those financing models would have on your business.
Yeah, thank you. Of course, most banks have been going to credit financing, basically for two reasons, I would say. One is that because of shortage of capital or funds to lend out or to grow the business. That's one way. Then the other one is, of course, the long-term financing. When you look at the structure of financing, the financial sector, you find that most of the savings that we have, or the money that we get from our lenders, is mostly short-term. So, and most of these projects out here, for example, infrastructure projects, say someone is putting up an industry, these people require some long-term funding. So banks have been going to for lines of credit to cover this gap. However, we see that co-financing, from my perspective, would be better than the lines of credit. One is that if you do a co-financing, for example, with Afrexim, excuse me, with Afrexim or another DFI, the beauty of it is that you learn from them. Right. These institutions have been there, have acquired knowledge and experience in financing, in project financing, and financing these big projects, which some of us, the local commercial banks, have not been to. So when you co-finance with them, they help you acquire that knowledge, or they cover the gap that may be in terms of skills and experience in financing some of these projects that you don't have. Two, you share, of course, the risk. By sharing with them the risk, you lower your risk levels. Then, of course, you also, as a local bank, of course, you contribute by bringing in the local expertise. Of course, you know you need to know, also bring down the risk by being a local bank. Of course, you know the local economics, you know the lender because he's a local. Then all that helps in mitigating the risks. As well as a local bank, when you co-finance with some of these DFIs, since most of these projects will be local, you help out in monitoring these projects. So there's a big advantage to me, to the local institutions, to co-finance than just lines of credit. Again, when you take on a line of credit, most of this comes in foreign currency. And you know there's a lot of fluctuation of foreign currency vis-a-vis. I mean, these lines of credit come in terms of foreign currency. So there's also a fluctuation, always a fluctuating of these currencies. So by co-financing, sometimes you could structure it in a way that the local, when you look at projects, some projects require some portion of local funding in local currency, and maybe most times also the foreign currency, because, you know, as Rwanda being more of an importing country, we import most of goods outside Rwanda. So you require foreign currency to do most of these projects. So Co-financing would help you in a way that a bank would not take on the foreign risk, whereby the DFI would finance the foreign exchange bit of the project, right, and we finance the local currency bit of the project. So you will all gain by not being hit by the foreign currency risks.
Right. Crystal, the reason why I asked from the banking industry and the manufacturing industry is because we'd like to know, to put a comparison, even as we churn out a generation of entrepreneurs or people who think entrepreneurship, we have to have stability of thought in the event that we don't have a stable economy. So what is the role now of CMU in trying to foster that particular culture, learning the trends that were there and mapping out what the future would look like?
I think this isn't something very new to us. I think it's kind of our core philosophy in terms of our approach to pedagogy, that we want to produce students that kind of have a perspective of self-directed learning, critical thinking, problem solving, and really foster a culture of research and curiosity that leads to innovation. And so one of the ways what has been unique actually about us being here in Kigali is that we have a number of students that don't come in with that perspective from kind of their undergraduate education. So a large number of them came from educational backgrounds that use like rote learning methodologies where they just had to kind of cram and repeat back on the exam what their lecturer had told them, where we're looking for them to actually create new knowledge beyond what their lecturers are teaching them in class. And so one thing that we do differently that we don't do at our main campus is we've had an extended orientation period where we really try to break the mindset that they come in with and really create this spirit of critical thinking and kind of set expectations for them, so when they actually start being graded during the active semester, they know what's expected of them.
Right. Mm-hmm. All right, thank you for that.